when you have something that has a lot of enterprise value around it, it's a mistake to go and do something else. Like it's distraction. The hardest part of your business is going from 0 to 1. Like you're making your first million, making your first $10 million. Like once you've done that, keep doing that.
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Veneri. Today I'm joined by Michael Brandt, co-founder and CEO of Ketone-IQ. In this episode, we talk about scaling the company's science-backed energy drink. Michael shares his approach to single product and ingredient mastery. Plus, we discuss metabolic efficiency, leveraging direct-to-consumer sales, and balancing elite performance with mass market appeal. Let's get into it. Today's episode is brought to you by EGYM. EGYM provides fitness and health facilities with smart workout solutions built on its ecosystem of hardware, software, and partners. But it's more than cool tech. Their connected training experience delivers business results while helping members reach their wellness goals. If you run a gym, health club, YMCA, or any kind of fitness facility, you should check them out. Visit egym.com to learn more. Hi, Michael. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Joe, glad to be here. Looking forward to a conversation today.
Yeah, looking forward to it as well. I think to kick things off, why don't we just start with the basics? Introduce yourself, tell us about Ketone-IQ, and then we'll get into the specifics.
Great. I'm Michael Brandt. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Ketone-IQ. Our parent company is actually EGYM. People have maybe heard about us. My background is I studied computer science at Stanford and then started getting really into endurance sports. I'm a marathon runner, triathlete, and took this kind of computer science-y engineering mindset towards human performance and started looking at everything. This was like a decade ago, kind of before it was more widespread, was looking at my heart rate and my HRV and my sleep score and my blood glucose. I remember I was ordering blood glucose monitors, like before there was like Levels and NutriSense and all those guys. Like I was ordering it off of like weird, like German eBay through like a German doctor's office without a prescription. It was just very early on, like biohacking and quantified approach to performance from just a spot of personal passion. Like how do I get really good at running tens of miles at a time? And you know, your energy, your metabolism's at the center of that. It's at the center of everything we do. And I think energy is the most important equation that we can solve, because if you have better energy, you can solve all the other problems in your life. And when you really start looking at metabolism, it's complicated, but also like not that complicated in the sense that we're always turning fuel into usable cellular energy, always, like, you know, whether you're awake or sleep or exercising or sitting at your desk or thinking, we're always making energy from the things that we eat. And like, there's just a different calibers and qualities of fuel that we can provide our body. A big insight for me. So I came in this kind of like tops down approach, engineering mindset, curious, just citizen scientist of it, and was looking at, okay, what could be venture scale in this space like that doesn't already exist. Like one of my favorite books is the Gatorade book of how they discovered electrolytes and invented that in like 1965 with the Florida Gators, and just taking that same approach into the modern world of like, okay, what doesn't exist, and seeing, like, I was doing some intermittent fasting, like I was doing a lot of different, trying out the keto diet, trying this and that, and seeing that your body makes ketones for metabolism whenever you're pushed to your limit. And they're this very efficient molecule. They're a molecule that your brain loves, that your body makes ketones. In fact, to fuel your brain with fuel when you're low on blood sugar from a fast or from just not eating a lot of carbs to begin with, or from exercising, that your body's always making ketones is this really efficient molecule that your brain in particular loves. And so that was where the entrepreneur light went off of like, okay, ketones are this high performance energy. Why can't you go to the store and buy a shot of ketones? And pulling that string that's what led to where we are today. Launched the world's first ketone drink back in 2017. In 2019, got a $6 million contract with the United States Department of Defense Special Operations Command. And I've just been iterating on it day by day, year by year, and things have really upticked in the last couple of years. In 2022, we commercialized our formula of Ketone-IQ, got it out into the world, and now we're on Amazon, we're on our website, we have ketone.com, we're nationwide in grocery stores like Sprouts, we're in every Equinox gym in the United States, and we're still very, very early. Like, we're still a tiny, like, nothing rounding error next to a 5 Hour Energy or a Monster, so we're still very, very early, but very excited for um, just the premise here of solving that energy equation and bringing a new ingredient, a new approach to energy science for the whole globe is really the mission here.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that evolution, and you've been at it, like we said, like a decade, and really evolving this. And I think a lot of people maybe be familiar with the HVMN and now evolving that into ketone IQ, and just thinking about, you know, metabolic health and energy and kind of like energy shots, and then the keto diet. Like all these things have happened, and you kind of being ahead of that trend in some ways. How do all those pieces fit together in your mind?
It definitely makes a lot of sense in hindsight looking back on it. I'd say for an entrepreneur, especially your first time around, you throw a lot of energy at a lot of different things to see what's gonna work. And I think that's true. Also, your second and third time around, but you might be a little bit wiser at crossing things off that are not going to work. What I can say is advice people I think have heard before, but it's that advice of like find your 1,000 true fans first. That for us, it was a big deal to get a Department of Defense contract, and then the pro tour teams started ordering it. So like that's the like Tour de France cycling teams, Tour de France going on. The early our first 1,000 true fans were the Department of Defense special operators and pro tour cyclists, and then like Conor McGregor caught wind of it because his SNC coach was an ex cyclist, and like it started percolating through this high end performance world of people that were down to. I mean, the product was very expensive at the start. It was $30 a shot and tasted crazy, and you had to like really understand the literature, the science behind it. And I mean, think about like the early days of Gatorade. People were wearing like plastic bags to like collect all their sweat, to like measure their sweat and see what was inside of it. Like we've come a long way to where people just kind of understand intuitively what an electrolyte is. And yeah, ketones were that way not that long ago. People had to really like grok it and understand it. But there's promise there. It's like, okay, well, someone is willing to pay $30 and listen to a 90-minute like lecture or like read a white paper or whatever, really understand it. And it tastes crazy. Like, but we had our like core person where it was moving the needle for those people. And that was very encouraging as an entrepreneur, where like obviously the goal for most entrepreneurs is like create something like with really big enterprise value for the world. Rome wasn't built in a day. Like breaking it into pieces, like can you make something for like can you make something that's very compelling, even if it's just for a niche group of people? And then, yeah, you have to believe that eventually that's going to generalize out that like, okay, special operators at altitude have like very high energy demands and need these like bespoke fueling strategies. So do pro tour riders who are, they're riding like 100, 150 miles every single day up the Alps at altitude against the other fastest riders in the world. And the Tour de France is a 3-week long event with 2 rest days. It's like, okay, these people have bespoke fueling needs. So like if you can solve that problem for them, like, okay, then if in theory, if you could bring down the cost and like democratize education and access and all that, like in theory, why can't this compete against 5-Hour Energy, which sells $1 billion a year? It's not going to happen overnight, but it's like in theory, it's like you think of the giant trucks full of like, it's like a U-Haul truck carrying like a megabyte of RAM back in like the 60s, 70s, and now everyone has like a terabyte in their pocket. So like you have to start with a problem that's like small, but that you believe can generalize out.
And then prove it in your case at like the highest levels in terms of military operators, elite athletes, and having this kind of like validation, and then being able to translate that not only in terms of the marketing and the product and the brand, but also just like the implementation of like, this is how you use the product. This is what it impacts, the energy production. This is how it impacts fueling. Was that piece, how challenging was that piece? And maybe it's still kind of like ongoing in some ways to say like, we've done this, we've established it, we kind of proven it, and like now here's why it kind of should be or could be on the shelf next to like a 5-Hour Energy.
Yeah, it continues to be the challenge. I feel like the two different hats I wear as a leader, the two different pistons that we have driving the business, are continuing to push into super high performers. So like we're doing a big study. We work with Team Visma Lisa Bike. They won the last 2 Tours de France, and we're doing a big study with them on just very detailed physiological endpoints. How do ketones help with your body's natural EPO production? EPOs has to do with how your red blood cells transport oxygen around. Ketones seem to affect angiogenesis, creation of new blood vessels to help transport blood through your body. So like there's these endpoints that, if you're pro tour, best in the world cycling team, you super care about, and like, what are the protocols involved with that, having it when you're on the bike as well as having it when off the bike and recovering. And at the same time, so as we like kind of go deeper into the belly of the beast and like the elite high end use cases, it's also we've also launched into a number of just 7-Elevens, and we're at the checkout at a bunch of grocery stores, and we also want it to just come across as like, hey, this is high performance energy. It's a more elite, better for you version of 5-hour or whatever else is out there, that without having to go and read a bunch of protocols and know what EPO is or know what like ATP is or what, like just all the science that like the high end consumer is going to want to know. I don't think that's ever going to end. I think you see that at all different scales of companies, right? You see, Goodyear will sell you tires, but then they're also figuring out tires for like F1. And I think that's actually a fun way to build out a business, is to always have the kind of skunk works going, like always have the high end, like, hey, we're really figuring things out at the tip of the spear, and then generalizing that out. Maybe the stuff at the tip of the spear commercializes, later, a couple years later. Maybe it never actually commercializes, because that's the concept car is the concept car, and you never actually sell that. But you learn things. And I think it's important to have that innovation engine where you don't know what you don't know. Like, maybe you make the concept car and like 9 of the 10 things don't ship, but one of the 10 things does ship. And maybe actually another one of the things ships. It just ships like 5-10 years later, when, some other facet of manufacturing or distribution allows for that to happen at scale. And I think it's important to always have that like innovation engine going, always be working with the best of the best of the best. I don't think that in and of itself, I can't make a business selling to professional cyclists. It's like 200 people, but can we use that as test bed and then like generalize out? I mean, even if you take all pro athletes, even if we work with every pro athlete across every league, it's still like, I don't know, 10,000 people, right? Like, how many people are actually competing in the actual Olympics or something? It's like not a real business, but it's important for that innovation that drives, your product. And also, it's cool. It's storytelling and all that awareness and education into broader market.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. And you do see that kind of across the board and across industries, and especially within, health, wellness, performance, where it's like all these things are validated at the cutting edge with the elite athletes. And then we're figuring out like, how do we market this? How do we distribute it? How do we get it into the hands and make it more accessible and more affordable? Like all those different pieces. I'd be curious, from starting out this saying like, hey, we've identified this opportunity, this kind of like, focus on ketones and this magic molecule and all the implications, how has the vision changed? Did you think kind of initially like, oh yes, this is going to be like a kind of shot that we get the price down and we're able to get it in people's hands? Or like, were there other formulas, were there other formats that kind of you had to go through in this innovation process to say like, no, this is the way that like we are going to get it to scale?
Yeah, looking specifically into ketones, there's a number of different ways to even deliver ketones into your body. There's different technologies out there. We have the best. Like, we've figured out a lot just through our research and development process, and we have a U.S. patent. We figured out a lot. There's a few different approaches. Like, so something that's been around for a long time, there's this technology called ketone salts, where you have a ketone molecule bounded to a salt molecule. So it'll be bounded to like a sodium or magnesium or potassium. The issue with that is that it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And the active dose for ketones is you want like 10 grams of that order, right? Like 5 or 20. You want something of that order of like 10 grams. So basically, like, ketone salts don't really work, because in order to get 10 grams of active dose of ketones, you're like overdoing it on salt. And so like that kind of equation kind of breaks. You can, but the technology is very cheap. It's very affordable to make it that way. So it's a plus if you want kind of like a small amount of ketones very cheaply. But for us, we were always like, okay, how do you deliver a large amount of ketones? Like, how do you really like move the needle, get someone into ketosis? How do you get someone above 1.0 millimole and plus very quickly, so that you actually get like meaningful physiological benefit from it? And so poked around at different technologies for a while. Early days, we used something called a ketone ester, where you take a couple different ketone molecules and you esterify them together. Like, ester is just a simple chemical bond. So we took ketone molecule A and ketone molecule B and esterified them together, and thought that was interesting, but ultimately it was very expensive to create that. So it ended up being just very like cost prohibitive in terms of like dollars per gram without, well, when we started looking at like, okay, molecule A, molecule B, that we could just deliver molecule A on its own, reduce the cost, and then actually molecule A is more performant than molecule B anyway. And so that's what we've evolved to with KetoneIQ. And so this is it's a pure ketone dial. We've just been able to get the cost down very efficiently. We make it through a fermentation process, and we're able to get the cost per gram of ketone down, like the lowest that anyone has been able to. And then you're able to have like a physiologically relevant dose of it. And I mean, that's our whole mission. Like our whole mission is like ketone delivery and very much engineering approach on it, where like we've evolved and like we continue to evolve. Like we have an R&D team. We're like continuing to look at how do we improve ketone deliveries. There are aspects like microencapsulation of like time release or like making it more palatable because microencapsulated. Like we're always looking at ways to continue moving the state of the art forward on it. And that's fun. I mean, it's actual, it's just like a live engineering project too.
Yeah, that part of it, I think, even from a consumer perspective, when you talk about a shift towards a wellness or holistic wellness, getting your shot in now for folks that are watching, um, keeping that energy up. But consumers are basically to this point where it's like they're skeptical of claims. They're kind of tired of products that don't actually work, that kind of lack this scientific backing. Like we talked about, obviously, you've done that and continue to do that from like the innovation standpoint. Then when you think of growth channels, just in terms of D2C, retail, social media, influencers, paid, like all of those things, how is that kind of landscape? How do you approach like this growth kind of playbook and thinking about these are channels that work for us, these are tactics that work for us, and then go about continuing to scale them up?
Yeah, the zeroth order thing is what you just said, which is something that people can actually measure. Like I don't know what the heck a acai berry actually does, right? Like there's a lot of food and supplement trends over the last couple of decades that are very flash in the pan and fad. And it was really important to me to do something that's the opposite, just coming in with engineering approach, quantified self approach, like wanting to see that, okay, does this actually register and actually measure? And that's one of the coolest things about ketones is that you drink KetoneIQ, you can immediately register it. Like you don't have to. And we're at a spot where like in the early days, everyone who bought the product would like go and do like a blood finger prick and be like, oh, cool, my ketones are up. And you can see, wow, the last time I got my ketones this high, I had to fast for 3 days. Like that is cool. And that is always at the heart. There's always the like falsifiability or like demonstrability of like that the technology does work. Even as we continue to grow, like 99% of people aren't going to do the blood finger prick as we continue to scale. But that's always at the heart, like that you could go and test it. And so that's why I say it's the zeroth order thing. The fact that you're able to like objectively measure it, and you also feel it. Like it has this like your brain is running on ketones. You feel more clear. It's not really like caffeine. Like caffeine in a way is more like stimulating, but ketones give your brain for most people, it's like a marked feeling of like, okay, I'm alert. I feel like I just took a nice nap. I'm like fresh, ready to go within like 10, 15 minutes. And so the ability to objectively measure it, the ability to actually feel it, those are really helpful. I think it's hard I mean, there's that old saying that like, you don't want to be selling a vitamin, you want to be selling a painkiller. Like you want to be selling something that like works and not just on like a hope and a prayer that like, oh, I don't know, keep taking my vitamins. I think it'll be good for me, but I don't really know what to measure on it. You want to sell something that like just like clearly directly works. This is me with like entrepreneur hat on. You want to be able to sell something that like directly works, because then someone tries it and they like it and they enjoy it, and then they know why they're taking it, and they'll stick around, and then they also have something to like tell their friends about, and like the actual like word of mouth factor isn't just like trust me, bro. It's like no, there's actually something concrete and believable behind the product. And so this is all like the zeroth order thing. And then we can talk about like, okay, do you do Facebook ads off of that? Do you do podcast ads off of that? Do you do TV ad? Like, okay, yeah. Like once you have, I think the zeroth order thing, then you get kind of growth hacky about how to best scale a brand. But like the zeroth order thing is it's the zeroth order. I think you gotta start on like a solid foundation, in especially health, wellness, and especially I would say it's also like you get to in this day and age, the fact that there's 50 million Americans with some kind of wearable like an Apple Watch or Aura or Whoop or continuous glucose monitor, the fact that you have this install base of 50 million Americans, globally as well, like that are like down to measure their biomarkers, or like trying to optimize their sleep. They want to have sources of energy that aren't caffeine and sleep hormone disruptors. Like the fact that you have this like install base of people who are quantifiably measuring, it's like you get to make something. Like if you make something that like demonstrably does move a needle, I mean, it's no better time to do it. I don't. You couldn't have done it a decade ago. This is a really exciting time to be, I would say, in the human performance space.
The Fitt Insider Podcast is brought to you by our friends at EGYM. This is an exciting partnership for us, and not just because EGYM makes some of the most innovative fitness products out there, but because the entire EGYM team, led by their CEO Philip, is committed to making health, fitness, and well-being more accessible for everyone. And that's a mission we can get behind. By combining their smart equipment with integrated software and hundreds of connected partner brands, EGYM helps fitness facilities stand out by delivering a personalized, gamified workout experience that improves outcomes and member engagement. So if you're a gym or health club operator thinking about how to best serve your members while driving business results, go see what EGYM is up to at egym.com. Yeah, there is that unlock, as you kind of talk about, of like, this works, and when I take it, I can feel it, and there's not a question as to like, why am I doing this, or are these claims true? And so that's like, that separates you already, especially in a space where there's not the type of necessarily regulation or clinical backing or scientific research that goes into it. And as you do that and you appeal to this kind of base that is opted in many ways, opted into optimizing, finding them and getting it to them is easier, as you said, than maybe ever before. When you think about reaching them and then broadening that base, do you feel like you've kind of like cracked the code on growth and distribution, and where to go to reach these different cohorts and how to do that in a way that's like cost effective? Because that's obviously, once you get past some of these foundational elements of like delivery and product and sustainability, like, hey, how do we really get this into the hands of more people, can be make or break, obviously, as and other founders know. So how do you think about like just growth and doing that cost effectively today?
Yeah, distribution is everything. Like the best technology, tree falls in the middle of the woods, no one's there to hear it. It doesn't matter. You really have to think about distribution. And I can say that D2C has historically been, I mean, that's where we started, and that's where we've grown the most. At the same time, we're in several thousand stores across America, whether that's bike shops and gyms, grocery stores, pushing now into convenience stores. And that ultimately is, I think, where, most normal people buy their like food and drinks and all that in real life, kind of at the moment of need. 80% of commerce still happens in brick and mortar. I think sometimes I can forget that. Maybe we can forget that as like tech people. Like most people buy most things, especially food and beverage, out in the world. But I will say, like, D2C has been our ramp and continues to be super core. And wouldn't have it any other way. When you're doing something super innovative, D2C is awesome because of the size of the surface area that you have with a customer. The fact that someone can come to your website, they can read about your product, they can watch a video, they can listen to podcasts, they can really like research your product in a deeper way. You don't have that in a store. In a store, your product's on a shelf and you have like a few square inches of like surface area on the packaging. And it's different. Like if someone finds you in a store, they couldn't even go deep if they wanted to. There's just not that much depth to what's on your product packaging. Whereas online, it's like there's a whole funnel, right? If you get aware of it, you see different ads, you see different people that you trust. Like when we launched nationwide in Sprouts, we did a partnership with Andrew Huberman, and so he's talking about ketones in the brain. And like you hear about the product from all these different ways, and it's like, okay, I can actually spend time with a brand, which is really important, especially in your early days when you're doing something really novel and inventive. Like all your early adopter type people care. Like they care to read the liner notes, they care to look at the white papers, they care to dive into it. So I think for anyone, I wouldn't do it any other way. I think if you're doing something really innovative, inventive, new, that starting out on D2C is the way to go. And then it continues to be, for us, it continues to be like that test bed. Like that's always the spot where we want to launch a new product. Like we're able to, survey our biggest customers, like who's buying the most, who's using the most. and what do they think about the new innovation, or what problem do they have with the product, or what idea do they have with the product that we can improve upon. And you don't get that when you're selling it into a gas station where there's like multiple levels of indirection between you and the end customer. You don't get that. So I like D2C for really like sharpening the product, the value prop, the messaging, you sharpen all that. And then when you're in a store, you have it all figured out. And then, yeah, volume is for most brands, again, like it's going to come in retail, but I like the 1-2 punch, like getting your first 1,000 fans on D2C, really sharpening everything about your value prop on D2C, and then taking that to, 10x your volume in the brick and mortar channels.
Yeah, I think that's really well said and super actionable for anybody else who's building a product like this or thinking about it and thinking about distribution and scaling in today's environment, because it's so, like, I think a lot of times people do get caught up on like, hey, yeah, we'll just do it and we'll launch it with an influencer partner and we'll scale it on TikTok and Instagram or with meta ads. And then, maybe get on Amazon and then like, we're off to the races. We're swimming in, gold coins and we've cashed out. It's like, it's way more complicated than that. And the kind of feedback loops, the education, the funnels, the relationship, all of those things, it sounds like from your experience and looking forward, it's like that matters more almost.
The way that you do it matters a ton. And a big part for us has been developing relationships with a lot of the people with platforms, creators, influencers, scientists, coaches, all that, people who have platforms and are just high trust in their community, who can help spread education about the product. And there's a limit to how much you can do as a brand to, like, pump your own product. Like, people are, I think, allergic to brand ads in a lot of ways. And it's not easy. And it just takes work, like to build real relationships with, Olympic marathon runners and, cardiologists, just broadening out the people that are telling the story on your behalf. I think takes more work. Like we all wish we had a magic switch where it's like you just flip on Facebook ads and TikTok ads. But I think, like, I don't know, like if you're selling a fidget spinner in like 2015, I think that worked. But I think in this day and age, especially if you're selling something more complicated, something people are putting inside of their body, then I think you gotta like earn your bones. You gotta like actually build that. You gotta build that trust with those people, because then if you're tapping into the trust that they have with their audience, I think ultimately that's the way to create a lot of value. It's just like it takes some time to do it, and you gotta really mean it. Like it takes a lot. And I think as a founder, you have to be really like citizen zero. Like you don't have to be the biggest influencer on planet Earth. It's great if you are. Like if Kardashians are listening in here, like that's a great approach. Like if you're already, have a massive following, but I don't think you have to have massive following, but you have to have a following. Like I will say that. I think you have to have you have to be like public about what you're building. I think it's just I think people don't want to really do business with people they don't know. And like, I think you're just at a massive disadvantage. If you're like, Instagram is private or whatever, the 400 friends from high school, like it's a missed opportunity to be out there in a public way that's going to attract the right customers. And importantly, like the other partners that you're going to engage with. Again, you don't have to be mega, mega famous, but I think just being out there in a way that's like transparent and like shows that you're building in public and that something that people can connect to, like it I think is table stakes for an entrepreneur. If you want to run any kind of D2C playbook, I think you got to be public as a founder, basically.
You've kind of established this, whether you think of it as a playbook or a platform, or at least like this model where it's like we took an ingredient, we figured out how to build a product and distribution around it, be super innovative, carve out the research, carve out the partnerships. And I've seen this a few times where like now people are like, oh, we can replicate this. What's the next ingredient? What's the next formula? How do we do it again? How do we broaden out into other SKUs and all these sorts of things? I could be wrong. It seems like for you, it's maybe the opposite, which is like, how can we go deeper? How can we go deeper into what we're doing? How do you think about maybe the kind of tension to like, hey, we need to have more products and SKUs and formats versus like, hey, how do we have the thing that we can get to the most amount of people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think really good reflection of how I think about company strategy. One of our more recent investors is Kurt, the founder of Vital Proteins, like blue collagen tubs you see freaking everywhere. And they exited for undisclosed multiple billions of dollars to Nestle. And they just sold collagen. And, a decade before, like no one was talking about nutritional collagen. They put collagen on the map and they just went hard on collagen, and they didn't launch a ashwagandha gummy and a this and a that. They just went hard on collagen, and it's commendable the way that they really focused on it. And like, yeah, when you have something that has a lot of enterprise value around it, it's a mistake to go and do something else. Like it's distraction. The hardest part of your business is going from 0 to 1. Like you're making your first million, making your first $10 million. Like once you've done that, keep doing that. Don't go and do the next thing. Like if you go and do the next thing, it's you just have all the headwinds of going from 0 to 1 on the next thing. Like it's kind of a vote of no confidence in your first initiative if you go on to a second one before you've really secured your first one. And now look, I'm saying this, I've done this as an entrepreneur. Like ketones was not the first idea that I had. I had several other ideas, and the reason I bailed was because they didn't satisfy the mission parameters of something being really truly venture scale. But like I only knew that by trying it. And then when I started the business, HVMN, the idea of health via modern nutrition was like identify a venture scale idea within quantified human performance. And so, yeah, I tried a number of things, and like I went on to the next one. My co-founder and I joke that we've made like 4 or 5 like $1 million plus product lines, and it's painful to bail. And the reason I say I just want to be clear on the advice, because I'm saying like to try to avoid doing this, but like, look, if you're marching up a hill that's like clearly not Mount Everest, and you realize that, then you should bail. But if what you're climbing up you do believe is Mount Everest, you should climb to all the way to the tippy top. Like if you're vital proteins, you're working on collagen, or your Gatorade working on electrolytes. If you're inventing something and you have first mover advantage and you're going on it, like just go. Don't distract yourself with the next thing over. But a lot of times that's, you don't know how tall the mountain is until you kind of get going on it. So I completely understand anyone who ends up bailing or diversifying out. I will say my mandate, just to cap off the answer there, but like my mandate has always been to get to a singular idea that I'm entirely focused on. I never wanted to do like broad portfolio of different stuff. I wanted to find the thing and then ride that up. And now that we've found that with ketones, all of our innovation goes into that. It's like, what are different like flavor systems that we can do? What are different other IP that we can file? What are different ingredients that we can stack with it? What are different formats that we can do? Like we just launched a soft shell pouch version that fits in your bike jersey. Like it's like all like, I think what you focus on and expands in business and in life, like everything's a fractal. If you really stare really hard at one technology space, if you really stare at it, like you'll see 20 different things, 200 different things that you can go and do inside of there. So like instead of being creative and launching something over in left field, it's like try to really stare at the main thing that you have in front of you and like direct your creativity inside of that. Like how can I be creativity on expressing this singular idea so that it's really focused and compounding, and like put all your creativity there. Like we own ketone.com. Like everything we're doing is I'm going to create $1 billion enterprise value around ketones before I launch a ashwagandha gummy, if ever. Like that's not on the menu right now.
It's so interesting, and I think important for a lot of different operators, founders to hear that, because I feel like there's that pull to be like, oh, we have to do the next thing, or we have to diversify to this format, or we have to try this over here. It's like the kind of dream really is, hey, can we find a thing that we feel like we can, like you said, a single SKU or a few SKUs or an ingredient or a product that we can scale to billions of dollars or tens of millions of consumers. And like, it's pretty rare to be able to do that in a way where like you have that level of depth and focus and conviction around that. It's reassuring and motivating, I think, in a lot of ways.
A couple things. One is, as soon as you launch the ashwagandha gummy next to your like original non-ashwagandha product, all of a sudden you have to chop your marketing budget in half, because like you have 2 different stories to tell now. And generally, like things work kind of exponentially. Like a lot of success is exponential. Like if your vital proteins talking about collagen, would you rather like chop your marketing budget in half and then, okay, all of a sudden you can't afford Jennifer Aniston in a billboard in every corner. You can do like the half-ass version of that, because you're now half-assed also selling an ashwagandha gum. I don't know why I'm picking ashwagandha so much, but you want to compound, right? Like you want to put every possible dollar in to the one thing. So you get escape velocity, you become a household name, you get like it's exponential once you get to a certain level of success. If you're Coca-Cola, if you're Gatorade, it's just like, it's way better to be Gatorade than it is to be Powerade. Like it's way better. And so you want to stack as much chips as possible. As soon as you start doing other formats or this or that, like you got to be really careful and honest with yourself. Like, is this actually the same story, or did I just chop my marketing budget in half? And now every single meeting, every single Monday, I have to think about, what am I focusing on this week? Where am I growing? And it's a really hard spot. And then this is like this is reflective of the exact same phenomenon, but like when you talk to the strategic acquirers, the Nestle's, the Unilevers, the Pepsis, like the acquisitions take place generally in a very focused way. Like RX Bar getting acquired by Kellogg's, like they were looking to up index on their like new healthy bar presence on shelf. And so if you're RX Bar and say, oh, hey, by the way, I have a ashwagandha gummy over here, like they don't care. Like the person buying your business is sitting at the like bars and snacks desk at Kellogg, and they're going to buy that. So if you also have a beverage or you also have a chewing gum, like that stuff just will get discounted. It's going to make acquiring your business a lot harder. I'm not saying I'm not in a hurry to sell the business. I'm not saying, but I do think your job as a founder is to, create optionality around an acquisition. Like maybe we sell, maybe we go public. I'm not in a hurry, but like, you have some fiduciary responsibility to create optionality around that. And like, generally, if you could make $100 million of top line around like a single format, that's just so much higher quality revenue than if you made $100 million across, several different aisles of the grocery store. Because again, who's going to buy you? It's going to be the beverage person at Pepsi is going to buy you, or the snacks person, like the bars person at Kellogg's is going to buy you. And if you have, RX Bar, they launched their like peanut butter and their oatmeal and stuff after the acquisition, after they got bought by Kellogg's. And then like your brand always, if you have a powerful brand, you always have that momentum and that kind of brand permission, so to speak, to be able to expand into other formats. I'd just be very careful not to do that too early, because it's going to shard out your marketing budget. And then it's also going to make a confusing story to any kind of potential acquirer.
Yeah, really well said. And I think will resonate with a lot of people who are thinking about this and thinking about opportunities and how they're building their company, which is exactly the type of insights we want to get to. And I think in wrapping up, so now here we are, and you've really kind of like laid out how you're thinking about it, like how you're thinking about the opportunity and growth and what you want this company to be. Like, is there anything we should look out for? Anything that's like on your mind, excited about, whether you want to tease it or point people there directly?
A lot going on with R&D, just playing around with a lot of different like flavor systems, sweetener systems, always looking at like just the right balance of like palatability and GI and all that. So we have some exciting updates coming out in R&D later this year. We have this big study coming out with the University of Leuven in Belgium that's in collaboration with the Tour de France guys. So some really interesting findings around human physiology. And then check us out in stores. We're in increasingly number of 7-Elevens. We're nationwide in Sprouts. We're in all those places I mentioned. And we always have this special deal where like there's a QR code on all of our bottles, where if you scan it, then your first one is free. Anyone with a phone number, you get any of our products first time free. We just believe in the product. We want to like, it's kind of growth hacky way, because instead of having like someone at every grocery store with hairnet and gloves on handing out samples every Sunday afternoon, we just say like, hey, it's baked into the product. There's a QR code. First shot is free. It's on us. Hope you enjoy it. People who have one tend to come back for another one. And then people can also check us out at ketone.com. We try to explain the science. We try to make it a super easy onboarding process. If people love the product, 60-day money back guarantee if you don't like it for any reason. And yeah, we made it just, I think we had 30% off for when first time subscribers, and just trying to make it really easy for people to get comfortable and get like get ketones in their lives, is like improve the way that they're fueling for all the things that they do.
Yeah, it's awesome. All of that we will have linked in the show notes. Definitely encourage people to go check that out. Follow along on the website and stores. Try it. You guys have been awesome to send us, and I've been a user of the various products over the years, but really enjoy it. And definitely it is that thing where you can feel it, which is rare, I think, with a lot of different products. But super grateful for the time today. Really enjoyed the conversation and excited to share it with our audience. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, thanks everyone for listening in. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you got value from the conversation, please consider subscribing and sharing the podcast with a friend or colleague. It's a massive help. And if you want more content like this, including news and insights on the latest industry developments, subscribe to the Fitt Insider newsletter at insider.fit.co. And one more thing, you can learn more about our recruiting and consulting services at fit.co. That's FITT.co. I'll see you here next week.